Maybe the real baby girl was the friends we made along the way.
Good girl.
Hi, I'm LadyJenevia, and on my channel, I talk about entertainment media. I received the entirely welcome gift of being able to attend an early press screening of the upcoming A24 film, Babygirl, starring Nicole Kidman, Dickinson, and much to my pleasant surprise, Sophie Wilde, who was the lead in that Australian horror film, Talk to Me. And finally, we also had Antonio Banderas in the role of Nicole Kidman's husband. A24 does not have a review embargo or do not reveals, I asked, so even though we're still about a month away from the film's release at the time of me recording this, I'm going to include both a spoiler-free and spoiler section in my review. But before we begin, I do want to first say that a massive part of why Babygirl was so much fun for me to watch was the element of surprise. There were a lot of audible gasping and giggling moments, not only on my part, but a significant portion of the audience at the screening I went to had that reaction. That audience did skew towards a higher percentage of women in attendance, so when I tell you this is a movie for the girls, I entirely mean that. But now let's first introduce the premise of Babygirl. A high-ranking CEO embarks on a forbidden romance with a captivating intern who is significantly younger than her. Nicole Kidman plays Rumi, the CEO, and Dickinson plays Samuel, the intern. To understand the appeal of Babygirl and why I find it refreshing within that category of an erotic thriller, you need to look at the fact that the film is both written and directed by Halina Reijn, who is a woman. To be clear, just because a filmmaker is a woman doesn't mean that their point of view is going to appeal to me or resonate with me. If a woman writes a story that is fundamentally opposite in its ideological perspective to what I personally believe, naturally, I'm not going to be as inclined to celebrate that art. But in the case of erotic thrillers, there are certain conventions and tropes that have become a standard, and more specifically, one that favors the male gaze and perspective. Let's use Michael Douglas as an example. He was the male lead, and more specifically, the protagonist in both Fatal Attraction and Basic Instinct, which are two of the most famous erotic thrillers. Basic Instinct is also a film noir, but the most famous thing in pop culture about Basic Instinct is not that element of whodunit, but a very specific moment that is NSFW content. You all know what that moment is. I don't need to explain it. In both of these films, the superficial pop cultural perception of them is one that presents sexual women as being dangerous. Fatal Attraction in particular feels like the model that more or less every mediocre or outright bad erotic thriller has been trying to copy for decades. That does not mean that there weren't other erotic thrillers before this, but I see Fatal Attraction as being one of the most recognizable works within that subgenre. There's a very clear-cut formula that other stories seem to follow where two people either strike up an affair that sours, or there's never a fully mutual affair, but either way, the pair involved in this dynamic will consist of a rational person, who is often the protagonist, who becomes the object of desire of an irrational person who usually exhibits sexually provocative behavior and aggression that escalates until a violent conclusion. Rinse and repeat, you've probably seen dozens of versions of that story played out by now. But in Babygirl, it subverts this by not pathologizing female sexuality. There's actually a great deal of empathy for all of the lead characters. If you hone in on isolated moments, there's definitely room to have a reaction of shock or disgust or outrage. But if you take the entirety of the story and really reflect on the full journey that it takes you on, I do come to that conclusion. In particular, the fact that you have a female protagonist, and the majority of the film is exploring her wants, desires, and her vulnerabilities and insecurities. In that sense, it felt refreshing. Now, if I try to extrapolate deeper meaning or messaging in this film, I personally didn't find much in it that was particularly profound, but I think the type of viewers that would feel like they learned something significant is an older generation unaccustomed to feeling like they are allowed to explore certain NSFW interests. At its most superficial epidermis level, Babygirl's appeal is its ability to serve a tantalizing spectacle. The film medium has always been designed around being a voyeur. That's why most of the time actors don't look directly into the camera. The camera exists as a window for the audience to be a voyeur of the story. And in the case of Babygirl, there's this constant provocation of a visceral reaction in the audience of, what did they just say? Did they really just say that? If you have a TikTok account, have you ever seen a video where someone is posting a video filming themselves, trying desperately not to get caught giggling while there is clearly a fight going on, or someone is having a messy meltdown in the same room as them, and the person is feeling giddy at being able to witness someone else's mess, but there's a clear boundary where it can never be a situation where someone is in serious danger or being seriously hurt. That is the superficial appeal of Babygirl. There are deeper layers for those who would like to explore and reflect on them, but more often than not, the audible reactions from the audience I was watching Babygirl alongside were coming from those moments specifically. You're watching an extremely wealthy, powerful woman get into a messy affair, being a hot mess. It's salacious. Will she be caught? What will the consequences be? And the only standout negative feedback I have for Babygirl was Nicole Kidman's wig. It looked so bad, and I don't understand why, because Nicole Kidman is an A-list Hollywood name and has been for decades at this point. How are you getting away with putting her in a bad wig? And not only that, it doesn't make sense within the story for her character to have a bad wig. It's a long-standing talking point online at this point to critique wig quality in Hollywood productions, but sometimes it does make sense for a character's hair to not look good because of who that character is. This is not one of those instances. It is explicitly written into the story that she is self-conscious about her appearance, she puts a lot of effort into trying to look better, and she's an incredibly wealthy CEO of a made-up company that more or less looks like a fictionalized version of Amazon. She would be able to afford high-quality wigs, the best that money can buy. I enjoyed all of the performances. I would be very interested to know whether or not Harris Dickinson was trying to be funny, but he definitely came across that way more than once. At least some of that has to be coming from the script, but he just kept making me laugh. To me, Babygirl is a popcorn movie for the girls. It's the type of movie where you gather all your gal pals and you go to see something that is over the top and highly entertaining, and you can walk out of it afterwards feeling like you can have it all. The way a certain type of men feel after watching mediocre action stories where the main character walks away in slow motion from something exploding, that's what Babygirl has to offer for the girls. I would like to talk about more of the specifics and offer up my analysis and interpretation, but I wanted to keep this part spoiler free, so there you have that.
You're very young. I don't want to hurt you. I think I have power over you.
Now let's start to talk about spoilers. This is for the people who have already seen Babygirl at any number of early screenings it's been having, or people who, for whatever reason, like to see spoilers before they see a film. I don't know. That's not the order of events I like to follow for the things on my highly anticipated watch list, but to each their own. One of the recurring dynamics in the film is between Rumi and her eldest daughter, and it's something I found particularly interesting because of what it seems to represent. On the one hand, her daughter makes comments more than once about Rumi's appearance, so she's seemingly a source of exacerbating the pre-existing self-consciousness that Rumi has within herself. But part of the criticism is also specifically about plastic surgery or cosmetic procedures. There's a point where we see Rumi getting some Botox injections. At least I think that's what they were. They were placed in a way that I would have guessed they were trying to target crow's feet. I don't know if it was supposed to be cheek filler instead, but to me, the specifics are not all that important. I think that this is part of a larger thematic focal point of this relationship, which is about contrast between generations. On the one hand, younger women might make older women feel self-conscious about their appearance, but on the other hand, a more rebellious and vocal younger voice might be more direct in how they address things. Her daughter is telling her the work she's getting done doesn't look good, but it's seemingly with the intent of telling her to just not get the work done and just look how she looks. And I don't remember where I heard this from, but I feel like I had heard it mentioned somewhere that there's a generational gap between, I would say, younger millennials or Gen Z compared to the generations above them, particularly when it comes to the topic of getting work done. And the point that was being made was that if you ask a younger person about the work they've gotten done, they are more likely to go, oh yeah, I've gotten this done, I've gotten this done, whereas the older generations are not only going to deny getting anything done, even when it's obvious that they have, but they're going to be more noticeably horrified that you would dare to ask them about that in the first place. Even if you are complimenting them in the process, if you're asking from the perspective of, oh wow, you look really good, what did you get done? But that dynamic between Rumi and her daughter Isabel extends into the main topic of the film, which is this affair. Rumi and her family are at one of their houses. Yeah, they have more than one. And late one night, she spots Isabel making out with the girl from next door in the pool. She asks Isabel about that, and it's revealed that Isabel already has a girlfriend whom she claims to be in love with. But this admission is delivered in such a way that suggests, well, she has her girlfriend whom she loves, but she's also a person with a whole lot of desires and chose to indulge in them. This exchange happens early in the film, and it seems to be something that gives Rumi permission to have an affair and explore this unexplored dynamic with Samuel. Rumi has desires that she has been unable to communicate to her husband Jacob, nor has he been particularly effective in trying to understand what it is that she wants. Samuel seems to have this weird, uncanny ability to know what people want, which is why he just very quickly starts poking at Rumi in a way that pushes them towards that affair with the dynamic Rumi wants. Isabel also catches Rumi when she's coming home late one night after going clubbing with Samuel and checks in on her, mostly just wanting to see if she's okay, and she tells her that she's worried about her. And it's very sweet of Isabel to do this because the way that Rumi is operating at that point is not sustainable. Something needs to give, and you know that there are going to be consequences and some sort of fallout. It's only a matter of time. But then we jump to the end, and this is after Jacob has learned about the affair. Isabel is the one who comes to the other house where Rumi has been staying and pleads with her to come home and saying that Dad isn't doing well. And she says that her girlfriend forgave her and that Dad will do the same. To me, this was a key moment for this idea to fully crystallize of how the film's narrative is exploring generational gaps when it comes to things like sex and sexuality. Because even when you look at Rumi and Samuel, there is a generational gap in how they look at initiating and acting out this affair and the dynamic they have. There's a part where Samuel is trying to explain to her that they need to have a conversation in which they will decide and agree on various terms and conditions of what their situation is going to be. And Rumi scoffs at him, saying something like, "Oh, what, did you read that in a library?" No, girl, he probably read it on the internet, where most people look things up. And I, by no means, am anti-library. I've said more than once, get a local library card for wherever you live.
It's about giving and taking power.
What did you do? Go to a library? Look that up?
This is what I'm talking
No,
about.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. No.
Despite Babygirl being the sort of narrative more likely to emotionally resonate with women who are either of a certain generation or come from a more repressed background that need that external perspective to validate that there is nothing wrong with having an interest in foraying into other things, leave me alone. Just let me tiptoe around saying things in a way that YouTube will not ding my video for. I think there's a bit of something for a lot of women to enjoy by watching this, even if it does circle back to that element of spectacle. Now, I want to make something very clear here. I don't like cheating. I don't typically empathize with narratives that are seemingly trying to justify or excuse cheating. But when you look at the earliest portion of Rumi's relationship with her husband, she kind of clumsily tries to communicate to him what she wants to try, and he doesn't understand and ends up embarrassing her for it. He doesn't have any malicious intent, but nonetheless, that is the impact of his actions and words. Then, when you fast forward past all the salacious material, everything that transpires between Rumi and Samuel, we reach the reveal and the fallout. Rumi admits to her husband that she slept with someone else because of these desires she has, and he doesn't take the news well, which is understandable, since he never consented to that in what appears to be a monogamous relationship. But when the fallout started to play out, I really wasn't sure where the story would go. Would the marriage end? Would someone die? Would the affair get exposed at her place of work, and then she would lose her job and lose everything she worked for? I really wasn't expecting her to completely win, but after seeing the film, in hindsight, it kind of makes sense. She keeps her job, her husband, her family, and on top of all of that, her husband gains a new understanding of what it is that she desires and is willing to try those things out so that she can better enjoy the time that they have together in the way that she has wanted to for decades. If I wanted to be particularly pedantic, I could nitpick the immaturity of this behavior and note how, well, if both of them had just had a real conversation about the intimacy issues they were experiencing and listened to one another, none of this would have happened. There would never have been any need for an affair. But here's the thing. Although the whole talk to each other, actively listen, go to therapy train of thought is the way to go in real life, this isn't real life. It's a film, which is meant to entertain and titillate the audience. So even if you're not going to give your protagonist a tragic ending and you're instead going to let her have the ladies, you can in fact have it all ending. Babygirl opts to take the more dramatic and messy route to that destination for the benefit of our viewing pleasure. Not every viewer goes to a film with the mentality of, oh, I'm going to dissect this and try to extrapolate deeper meaning from the material after I've watched it. I often do, usually for the sake of reviewing it, and also my own interest in the art of filmmaking and storytelling. But Babygirl delivers for the people who want the spectacle of a salacious affair without the emotional battering ram of the female protagonist you've become become emotionally invested in, losing everything and being punished for her desires. But one final detail I want to add, it's more of an indulgent note anyway. I'm not even going to spill this detail in case people who haven't seen it are going ahead and watching the spoilers anyway. That thing Rumi said to her husband about midway through the film, it's been ages since I've experienced an audience reaction that good. From myself and from all the ladies in attendance, the very loud audible gasp and immediately bursting into laughing afterwards because we were in disbelief and shambles over her saying that to him. I'm not even saying that she shouldn't have said it, but the way that she said it, oh, Babygirl is unhinged, and I was thoroughly entertained. Highly recommend it. Go get the girls and watch it together when you're on holiday break because you don't want to miss this.
This movie is a tribute to liberating yourself. Men, women, for everybody. It's a very hot movie.
This Christmas, get exactly what you want.